Salut, c'est Mathieu de Ludovox et aujourd'hui, donc on est dans le hall des jeux et principalement sur le stand de FFG sur le hall des jeux et je suis avec Lukas Litzsinger. Litzsinger, sorry. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. My voice is dying again, but it's the same for every event. What about you?
It's still going on a little bit, but it's not as strong as it was at the beginning of the con, that's for sure.
So, what have you done for this con? I know that you have held tournaments here, but what kind of a tournament?
All right, so the main tournament that I was a part of was the Android Netrunner National Championship for North America. And so we had 237 players come out, play 7 rounds of Swiss. We cut to a top 16 double elimination bracket. And we ran it over 2 days. So we had the Swiss on Friday and then the finals yesterday on Saturday. And I'm pretty happy with the result. Like, we had a bunch of strong players. There was good competition, and we had a really excellent pilot in Lucas Lee, who took it home, and he's from my hometown of St. Louis, so I got a shout out to him for that, hometown hero.
So there is a new expansion with NBN, the NBN faction, and it features new runners. For example, kind of neutral runners that people were expecting. So how do you think this is going to impact the game, and what is the state of the game right now?
Right. I think that in Destiny will definitely shake up the game, and even some cards that are coming out in the data packs at the end of the Sand cycle will also probably shake up the game a little bit. Film Critic will definitely make people think twice about the agendas that they're putting into their deck. NAPD Contract, Future Perfect, those are everywhere. You saw them all over the place during the national championships, and those are definitely riskier with Film Critic around. So there might be less side games in the future if people start playing that card. But I think that in Destiny will definitely shake things up. The runners are all pretty competitive in my mind, and they have 25 influence to spend, which is more influence than anyone has ever spent before in Netrunner. And so that will allow people to be really creative with what they put together in a deck. So it should be pretty fun.
Well, it's going to be this kind of crazy. Is the balancing more and more difficult to achieve now that the card pool has grown?
Actually, I think balancing becomes easier to achieve as the card pool becomes larger to a certain extent. Obviously, you have to watch out for unintended interactions between cards, so that becomes a little bit harder. But early on in the game's life, it was hard to balance because any good card or set of cards could actually kind of warp the environment because there weren't enough cards to counteract them, and you weren't able to put in enough safety valves into the game. And so each pack, when it first came out, was here's 20% of the card pool. Wow, that's crazy. And now we're down to a much more sustainable couple percent every time a pack releases. And so the cards are not as large of a proportion of the card pool, and there are more things that can counter them.
The infamous Jackson Howard.
The infamous Jackson Howard, yeah, he was a big one. I mean, Corps were definitely kind of hurting when he came out, and he evened the scales a bit. So I think he's an important card, and I'm glad that he's around.
Yeah, well, it spices up things for the Corp, and it's kind of a staple. Sometimes, you can't avoid having one in your deck. Could you tell us about the future of Netrunner? What is going to be the next theme for the new cycle?
Right, so the next cycle is the Mombat cycle. So we actually are exploring the Indian Union, and we're kind of exploring what's going on with androids there, because people are pushing for the rights to give clones full citizenship, and when Genteki loses their product, that's a big deal, so they don't like that. So we're going to do a lot of fun things kind of thematically with that cycle, and it'll be fun to explore a new area of the world. But mechanically, you'll see a lot of interesting cards. I can't really spoil too much anything there, but we aren't introducing anything new or crazy or that will break the game, but it should shake up the environment as usual.
And how do you design the fluff, the lore of the game? Do you do it in pair with the writers, or do you just come up with new ideas?
Right, so we have an Android story team, and I'm part of that team. Dan Clark, who actually created the Android universe, is part of that team, and he drives a lot of the flavor of the game. Katrina Ostrander, who is our editor and does a lot of work with the various IPs, she's also part of that team. And then Zoe Robinson, who is the art director. So we do a lot of the flavor work on the game, and sometimes we get together in a meeting room and we toss ideas out and just kind of brainstorm what we want to do next, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, because well, one of the funniest parts of the game is that it's so thematic. It's kind of wow, always like amazing me. Every time I see a new card, I'm like, wow, that has flavor. Whoa. What is your favorite faction, or do you prefer corp or runner?
I don't know if I have a favorite faction. I mean, I do enjoy playing Anarch right now. They have a lot of good options. All of their IDs seem viable in this environment, so there's cool deck building to be done there. As far as side, they're both so different. Like, that's the great thing about the game. You can play one game as the corp, you can play one game as the runner, and you're making completely different decisions, different gambles, different bluffs. Like, as the runner, I love to be aggressive and just flatline myself on ice all the time. You know, just run, run, run. And as the corp, I like to play a little more methodical, you know, try to get people into my traps and stuff. But, so, you know, my decks, most of the decks I make are not like hardcore competitive decks because, I mean, I like to have fun with the game when I'm not play testing. But I could not possibly pick like an overall favorite faction or side. And if people did, they'd be like, ah ha ha, ah ha ha. So that's why XYZ card came out. But it's like, no, it's not true. I like them all. They're all my children.
Okay, and 2 days ago, FFG had a big conference going on, and the in-flight report, right? And a game that you designed, well, sort of, was announced. It is the 3rd edition of Roombound. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I designed the 3rd edition of Roombound, and Roombound is an important game. In 2005, the 2nd edition came out. And so now it's been 10 years since we've released a new game for Roombound. There were expansions that came out over the years, but people have been kind of anticipating and waiting for this game to come back, and we're bringing it back, and I'm really excited about it. We're able to make a lot of updates and changes from 2nd edition, and so I know the purists who love 2nd edition will be like, why did you change my game? But it's like, we're giving you another option to play your game because you have your game and you love 2nd edition, and we don't want to take that away from you. Like, you'll always have that game that you love, but here is a new take on it, a new vision for Runebound, taking a lot of the stuff like the terrain dice and the adventure gems that make Runebound, but updating it and giving it, you know, a little more pizzazz and just choice. Like, I want people to kind of choose the adventure they want. If you want to fight, you can go into the fight deck. If you want to explore, you can go into the exploration deck. If you want to have social encounters, you can go into the event deck. And so you can kind of build your own adventure and figure it out. But, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, like, I think the most innovative part of the game is the combat system where you flip tokens. And I know people will be a little bit skeptical at first. They're like, give me dice. I want to roll dice. But, like, you know, trust me, try it out. By the end of the first game, you'll be like, I understand, I think, why they did this. It allows us to do a lot of cool stuff. Every item you get has a token associated with it, so it gives you this unique thing to use in combat, and it's a lot of fun. I'm really, really excited about it.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Android Netrunner is not the only card game that you have worked on. I think you worked on Warhammer Conquest and Invasion as well.
Invasion, yeah. I didn't really work on Conquest, but I did work on Warhammer Invasion, yeah.
So, what about the differences of design that you have to check for board games and against card games?
Right. So, I mean, they're vastly different beasts entirely. I mean, like a card game is actually in a way easier to test than a board game, not because of all the interactions in it, but just because, like, when you send files to like external playtesters, it's very easy for them to like kind of mock up the cards. They have cards, like, you just got to sleeve them, like throw them in behind Magic cards or Lord of the Rings cards or Game of Thrones cards, whatever. Even other Netrunner cards that you have, you just, you know, cut them off and sleeve them and you're good to go. With a board game, you have all these different elements and stuff interacting, and so it's kind of harder to get people who are willing to do all that mock-up and work. But to our playtesters who do, thank you so much. Like, I love you. Like, it really, really helps us out. And as far as the approach of testing, like, a card game is very competitive, so like I try to like balance it at the top level of competition because you want to make sure that the players who play it all the time are happy with the game and they have interesting choices to make. You also sometimes think about casual stuff, but top level competition. For a board game, it's a little bit more, not casual, but it's a little bit more, I suppose, it's different. It's not more casual, it's just different. Like, you don't have this release schedule of every month a new card is coming out, so you can spend a little more time to make sure the core game, the core environment is balanced. And so you actually spend more time refining kind of the interactions and figuring out what sort of experience you want people to have rather than like what strategies they're going to employ. And so it's definitely kind of different, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's people playing the game, giving you feedback, you playing the game, changing, playing the game again, changing, playing the game again. It's an iterative process, and you just have to play the game as much as possible, or you'll never end up there.
I think there will be expansions for Roombound that you can speak of, probably.
There's a good chance.
And, I'm sure you will do a good job doing them. But for this GenCon, did you have the time to wander around in the exhibit hall and shop, maybe? What did you buy, if you did shop?
I haven't bought anything, but I have wandered around the exhibit hall, make some trades today. But, there's some cool-looking games out there.
Can you quote any?
Well, I actually played Codenames, which is Vlada's new game, a couple nights ago. That's like the only new game I've actually played, and that was a lot of fun. But usually I don't have a big chance to actually play a lot of games at GenCon, which is kind of a bummer. But, I mean, you still get to talk to cool people and have fun.
It's the same for us here. Lucas, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for explaining things about Netrunner and Roombound. This was really great. Thank you very much. Salut, à bientôt sur Ludovox.